For anyone looking to build or maintain a garden pond, one of the most important things you can learn about is bacteria and their role in keeping water safe for fish and crystal clear. Once you understand their role and how you can best utilise them, you'll save a ton of money and stress. G'day, my name is Kev, and that's the aim of my channel, to help people build and maintain ponds without spending a fortune. If that sounds like something that interests you, please subscribe, check out my other videos, and visit my website ozponds.com. So I have multiple ponds, all with crystal clear water, healthy fish, and no UV filters, and many are in full sun. Keep goldfish, native fish, white cloud mountain minnows, and rice fish. My ponds come in various shapes, sizes, and utilise different types of DIY or store-bought filters. But the common theme in every single pond and filter is nitrogen processing bacteria. If you're willing to bear with me, I'll explain how the bacteria works, how you grow it, how long it takes to establish, things you can do to make the pond as self-sufficient as possible, the different sorts of bacteria, the role temperature plays, and probably some other stuff as I waffle on. I will try and keep it as straightforward as I can. Keep in mind I'm not a scientist, just a pond-crazed individual trying to help you maintain a crystal clear pond naturally. So first, the basics. Fish produce ammonia when they breathe and when they poo. Ammonia is a form of nitrogen and it's toxic to fish. We need a type of bacteria to remove the ammonia to make the water safe for the fish. Unfortunately, these first group of bacteria convert the ammonia into nitrite. Nitrite is also a form of nitrogen and it's also toxic to fish. But thankfully, there's another type of bacteria that will take the nitrite and convert it into nitrate. Nitrate is still a form of nitrogen, but fish can tolerate nitrates in small doses. So these bacteria are constantly processing one form of nitrogen into another form of nitrogen. Hence we call this process the nitrogen cycle. We are able to complete this cycle by fully removing the nitrate. I'll come back to that later. For now, I just want you to understand that fish produce ammonia, bacteria convert the ammonia into nitrite, and then more bacteria convert the nitrite into nitrate. One of the best things about these bacteria is that they exist all around us and they will colonise your pond naturally. They will grow on every wet surface within the pond, on the rocks, the plants, the liner, even inside the pipework. So you might be wondering, if that's the case, why isn't your pond crystal clear? The answer almost always is you simply haven't provided enough surfaces for the bacteria in relation to the amount of fish. Remember, the fish are producing ammonia. More fish means more ammonia, less fish means less ammonia. The more ammonia there is, the more bacteria you'll need. So to increase the bacteria, you need to increase the wet surface area. You'll notice all my ponds have rocks and pebbles inside them. This increases the amount of wet surfaces available for the bacteria. While that helps substantially, it in itself still might not provide enough surface area. One of the most important roles of a pond filter is to provide extra surface area. They also have other functions such as capturing sediments, but for this video I just want to focus on the biological or bacteria component of the filtration. All the best filters will move water through certain materials that provide wet surface area for the bacteria. I did recently make a video on homemade filters, how you can design them. I also have quite a number of videos on different types of filters that I've made, plus videos like how much flow should move through, all the different styles, etc, etc. If I went through each different type of filter and how to build them in this video, it'd go too long. So if you want to build your own filters, and I suggest you should if you want to save money, then feel free to check out those videos and the playlists that I'll put in the description. Alrighty, so now we know we need wet surfaces, and the more wet surfaces we have, the more bacteria we can grow. So in a new pond, how long does this take? When we build a pond, there's no bacteria. It takes time for them to colonise and establish. During this time, the pond may turn green, but that's okay. The green water is caused by single-celled algae, which grows to help consume the ammonia and nitrite that is being produced. That green water is actually helping keep the water safe for the fish. Once the bacteria become established, the water will clear. Now, in my experience, this usually happens quite quickly, especially when increasing the filtration or wet surface area on an existing pond, but it can take longer on a brand new pond. Most fish keepers in the aquarium hobby will say that the nitrogen cycle can take up to 3 months to establish, if you do nothing. Of course, you can add bacteria to help speed up the process. To be honest, I'm not sure where I stand on this. Every pond is so different, even for me, in my yard. If we take this pond for example, it's an aquascape pond kit and came with an auto-dosing system which drip feeds beneficial bacteria into the pond. The pond still went green. When I built this pond, it also went green. I added bacteria sachets to no effect, but as soon as I added a bog filter, the water went clear in 2 weeks. This pond never went green, but I had problems with sediment until I discovered the beauty of flocculant. This latest pond that I built hasn't gone green, but I have had some issues with string algae. This wine barrel pond also never went green, but I did experience the string algae. But again, now the water is clean, clear and healthy. So as you can see, on a new pond, you never know what to expect, but you can most likely expect something, whether that's green water or string algae. I advise that in a new pond, you add fish in slowly. This will give the bacteria time to adapt and grow as the ammonia levels increase. If you really want to, you can watch the nitrogen cycle occur by testing the water every couple of days. First you'll see a spike in ammonia, then the nitrite, and then the nitrate will come. Once that happens, you can be confident that the pond is completely fish safe. I'm too lazy to test so much, so like I said, I just add a few fish at the start, then a few more in a couple of weeks, and so on. You also don't need fish to kickstart the nitrogen cycle and the bacteria growing. Any organic materials like leaves falling into the pond will release ammonia as they break down. Then along comes the bacteria to process it. Some people will add in fish food before the fish to start the process. Again, that's just because the food releases ammonia as it breaks down to start the cycle. I've even heard of people peeing in their ponds to add ammonia. That's not something I've done. Another great way to help colonise the pond with bacteria is adding in plants or rocks or even filter media from an existing pond or water body. I'm telling you all this because basically no matter what, that bacteria is going to find the pond and colonise it. The only way you can really stop it from happening is by running a constant supply of chlorinated water through the pond. That's just going to kill any bacteria. So again, as long as you have enough surface area for the bacteria in relation to the amount of ammonia being produced, your pond will remain crystal clear. It's that simple. So here's why I don't use a UV light. If I killed off the single-celled algae, I would need to test the water constantly. Like I said, I'm too lazy for that. If I supersize the amount of wet surfaces for the bacteria, I should never have an issue. Plus, because I don't have a UV light, if the amount of fish ever got to be too much for the system, my water would go green. That helps make it safe for the fish, but it also lets me know that the balance has been tipped. And I need to either increase the area for bacteria or reduce the fish load on the pond. Now, in saying all that, there may be times of year that the pond does go green, even though there is enough surface area for the bacteria. There seems to be a general consensus that when the water temperature dips below 10 degrees Celsius, The bacteria slow down, they die or they go dormant. Either way, this doesn't seem to be a problem over winter because the fish also slow down, they stop feeding, etc. So therefore the amount of ammonia being expelled decreases at the same time as the bacteria slow down. But then when spring rolls around, the water temperatures increase, the fish get more active, you might start feeding again, and the ammonia level start to rise. Sometimes it takes a while for the bacteria to catch up, and then you get the single-celled algae stepping in. But once that bacteria population gets to where it needs to be, the water will clear up again. For me personally, this has never happened, as even though I'm in southeastern Australia, the water never freezes or anything like that. But if that happens to you where you live, there are a few things you can do. First off, don't feed the fish as soon as they wake up after winter. In a healthy pond, there will be some algae and biofilms growing on the rocks. The fish can feed on these first. This is actually more beneficial than feeding on high-protein commercial food, especially when that water temperature is still low. And again, the bacteria will restart and work without your intervention, but if you want to speed it up, you can add some store-bought pond bacterias. Lastly, I want to talk about the role of plants, the different oxygen zones within a pond, and how that affects the function of the bacterias. Once you understand this last piece of the puzzle, you can complete the nitrogen cycle. So first off, you'll notice all my ponds have plants. I grow plants for a living, so I'm very fond of them. But from a practical standpoint, plants like to consume nitrogen, which works to our advantage as ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate are all forms of nitrogen. Therefore, plants can assist the bacteria to process nitrogen. Keep in mind though, plants can also add nitrogen back into the water. If you allow the dead foliage to decompose inside the pond, that will re-release that stored nitrogen. The plants can also be less dependable than the bacteria. They grow slower and therefore they can't adapt as quickly to ammonia spikes when they occur. For me, plants are a complement to the overall pond look and the filtration. They're not a filter in themselves. A lot of people like to say that plants will consume the nitrates produced by the bacterias, but in my research, it seems that they'll absorb ammonia before nitrate. They can consume nitrate, but it seems to be a more inefficient process. But there are bacteria that live in anoxic zones of the pond that will remove all the oxygen from the nitrate atoms and leave just nitrogen. This nitrogen dissolves in the water and gases off into the atmosphere as soon as it has a chance. So you're probably wondering, what the heck is an anoxic zone? There are three main zones of different oxygen levels within a pond. The aerobic zone. These are areas that are rich in oxygen. This is where most of the bacteria we mentioned earlier are busy processing the ammonia. Anoxic zones. These are zones that contain very low amounts of oxygen. This is where the bacteria that can convert nitrate into pure nitrogen live. And lastly, we have the anaerobic zones. These areas have no oxygen at all. So almost all filters look to have plenty of aerobic areas because we know that these can grow the bacteria to quickly take the ammonia and convert it into nitrate. These bacteria need the oxygen to work their magic. As they convert the ammonia, they consume oxygen. That's why a lot of pond owners will add air stones or waterfalls to their ponds to help reoxygenate the water, which is good as the fish require oxygen too. Filters looking to optimize aerobic conditions will generally have a high flow because all that agitation helps oxygen mix with the water. These types of filters work great and will happily convert the ammonia to nitrite and then nitrate. Then the idea is your plants will consume the nitrates, or you'll have to dilute the nitrates by doing water changes or through rain events. But if we could incorporate some anoxic zones, remember those are the low oxygen zones, some or all of that nitrate could be converted to gas and dissipate into the atmosphere. Now, I'm a big believer in ecosystem style ponds with rock, gravel and plants. As I've already mentioned, this helps create surface areas for the bacteria, but it also diversifies the life inside the pond, including the bacterias. If we follow this approach, within the pond itself, we'll find different oxygen zones, and therefore different habitat for those different types of bacterias. Think of it the same way you would diversify an investment portfolio, or the way you diversify your diet to stay healthy. Once you get the balance right, you won't need to rely on any one piece of the puzzle. The plant's various bacterias and microorganisms will work together or independently to keep the water in tip-top shape. I'm a big fan of bog filters, as these will help diversify those zones within the filter also. In a nutshell, by having multiple methods of processing and removing nitrogen, your pond should stay crystal clear with very minimal intervention on your part. And remember, no matter how good the filtration system is, if you have way too many fish and feed them way too much, the bacteria will have a hard time processing all that ammonia, and you'll end up with water quality issues and possibly sick fish. I hope this video wasn't too boring and was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See ya.